Blackwood chapter has arrived in Elder Scrolls Online, and my first build, PvP, is my stamina-based Templar called the Vanguard. What I did is updated this build with some of the latest and greatest gear sets, as well as making the skills much simpler. So if you're looking for a very survivable, simple build that can be very effective in both Cyrodiil and Battlegrounds, this is the build for you. So I'm going to go over what I typically do: skills, gear, champion points, consumables, and the usual suspects. Stay tuned and let's get started. So first thing you're probably going to want to know is gear. What's changed? And so the gear setup, I'm going to start with the most impactful piece. That is a one piece called Gaze of Sithis. This is through the Blackwood chapter. You have to have that, and I'm going to give you an option if you don't have that. But what it allows you to do is gives you a lot of max health, a lot of health recovery, and armor at the expense for blocking. So you can still block, it will still consume your stamina when you take damage while blocking, but it doesn't give you any benefit. So for me playing a Stamplar, I don't survive by blocking. I survive by healing, line of sight, mobility, and dodge rolls. It's a perfect setup. So what it allows you to do with one piece of gear is go super aggressive on your other pieces of gear because it provides so much defensives with just one piece. And the shoulder that I pair with it is Damahos. So I go heavy, Gaze of Sithis, light Damahos, and 5 medium on the rest. Damahos will give you added max magic and max stamina, Falkreath Horns of the Reach DLC. So with these two pieces of gear, I get a ton of max stats and a ton of defensives. If you don't have Gaze of Sithis or Damahos, you can get Scourge Harvest, and this is found in Wayrest Sewers 2. This is going to give you a ton of defensives, and the one piece adds max health. It's not going to be nearly as effective as Gaze of Sithis Damahos combination, but it's a great place to start if you don't want to get this or you don't have the chapter. Okay, and then on the body, what I run is Unleashed Terror. This has been nerfed, but people understand it's still extremely powerful, and the way proc sets now scale is based off your weapon damage, but it still hits pretty hard, and for a 5-piece works very well because it makes our gap closer add some damage. Very simple. Unleashed Terror can be obtained in Castle Thorn, Dungeon Storm Thorn DLC, and you can run it on normal just to get the body pieces if you want. The next 5-piece people have been using for a while, I use it in PvE and PvP. It's fantastic, called Deadly Strikes. You can get this through the Cyrodiil vendor in the town of Bruma by buying random bags with alliance points. What it's going to do, the 5-piece, increases your physical, bleed, poisons, disease damage, and channels, meaning your damage over time with your biting jabs by 20%. A crazy amount of damage. So you're going to run 2 5-pieces on at all times, and then you're going to have a weapon with Deadly Strikes, so when you're doing biting jabs, it'll be on it. So you're going to have a 1 and a 1 for head and shoulders, 2 5-pieces on at all times. On my back bar, what I go with is Perfected Spectral Cloak. This is obtained in Veteran Black Rose Prison Murkmire DLC, and I'll give you an option to flex in if you don't have this. I don't think people understand how useful this is, but when you cast Quick Cloak or Deadly Cloak, when it procs and does damage, it's going to reduce your damage taken and increase your damage done by 6% for 2 seconds every time it deals damage. This is not affected by the buff system, right? So this will stack with other buffs that reduce or increase your damage, making it incredibly powerful right to pop this ability, Bar Swap Charge In. Telling you, it makes a huge difference in damage survivability. If you don't have that and it's a pain in the butt to get a hold of it, get Blessing of Pontinence. This is obtained in Cyrodiil Velastrix Elite Gear Vendor, and it's going to reduce your damage taken from players by 3%. So when you're on your back bar, you'll be a little bit more sturdy because that's going to be what you're going to be using to heal. So that's the gear setup. Let's talk about the skills, and I change kind of my loadout. So I go 2H, two-handed for damage, and dual wield for survivability, a little bit different. So the first ability up, got a buff, Stampede. It's absolutely insane damage. It's going to place basically a dot on the ground. It's an auto crit and a gap closer, high mobility, high movement. So basically you're going to use Stampede along with Biting Jabs, our number 4 ability, which is your main spammable, AoE and single target. You literally just have those 2 abilities for damage. That's pretty much it. So you're going to gap close, 1 or 2 biting jabs, gap close, you're going to stay on them, stay on the target. The second ability is forward momentum. This is weapon damage, but really it's a mobility tool. So I go with this over rally because I like the 4 seconds where I can't be snared or immobilized. So it makes very good use. You'll see a lot of time in this video where I'll, boom, put my sword up, hit a forward mow, and then I'll charge in. That way, when I get there, I'm not going to be snared and immobilized 1 second in. Next ability up is Repentance. It's a resource tool when we kill something or corpses are laying around. Plus, there's passives for just having it slotted on our front bar. Very, very useful. And it's another skill on our bar that does something for us just sitting there. Biting jabs, we already talked about that, so let's move on to Camo Hunter. So this gives you passive weapon damage for having it slotted, weapon critical, but really it's increasing your damage when you crit from the flank. So if you have a crit, Stampede, auto crit. You hit him with a Camo Hunter from the back or the flank, you're going to get a little bit of that buff, Minor Berserk, for a few seconds. Also, you're going to crit rush in. Let's say you don't hit him from the flank. You're going to wheel around to get the back. You're going to be rewarded for hitting someone from the back or the flank. So constantly think, how can I get that angle? Because when Camo Hunter's on the bar, it's nasty. Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Hello, my character's name's Donnie Deltia, so we have to have Dawnbreaker of Smiting, dealing physical damage, stun, AoE. This is our absolute melt tool. Back bar, dual wield, and we go with dual wield pretty much for deadly cloak, quick cloak combination, but the first ability is restoring focus. This got buffed and changed, so now it's going to give you the armor buff, resource sustain, but what it also does is it's going to heal you while standing in there based on your max health. So if you have a huge health pool, hello, Gaze of Sithis, or heavy armor, getting you about 30, 31,000, this thing can actually heal pretty substantially, just sitting in there. Second ability, Quick Cloak. It's going to play well with our gear. It's mobility. It's damage. It's going to proc that effect. And it's going to give us major evasion. It's just too good not to use on pretty much every build. Next ability up, Extended Ritual. This is the bread and butter for survivability on a Magpar or Stamplar. I'm telling you, cleansing 5 negative effects is what separates the good and bad players, because there's going to be so many damage over time effects coming at you, especially now with proc sets and Cyrodiil, that one cast of this can save your lives constantly. So consider this your #1 priority when you see that bar light up with negative effects on you. Now we have Binding Javelin, our back bar. It's a single target knockback and stun, plus it's an Adric Spear ability, so having one on our front and one on our back will be very, very useful. Resolving Vigor, this is just a burst heal over time we're going to use for survivability. We're going to try to lay down Restoring Focus, Extended Ritual, and then a Vigor to heal. And then our ultimate, which is flexible, Temporal Guard. So it's low-cost ultimate, it travels back in time. It does give you minor protection for having it slotted. Now, if you don't know, Stamplars pretty much have minor protection up a lot of times because you're going to use an Adric Spear ability and a passive in there will give it to you. This is just nice to have on the bar because it's 100% uptime when you go to that back bar. And typically when you go back to that bar, you're in trouble. You need to heal, you need to cleanse, you need to put your rune down. Another option for you is Remembrance. That's the Restoring Light ultimate. It's going to be, basically it's going to allow you to stand still for 4 seconds and pretty much not die. Plus it's going to heal allies as well. So flex that in or out if you don't want to get the Psijic skill, you don't think it's that useful, and you just need a defensive heal. I really like on the back bar. So racial choices, if you see I'm playing this in a female Imperial, and it gives you max stats, but it has reduced cost, and that does apply to ultimates as well. So it's a good all-around racial choice. Orc is also fantastic because it has speed, weapon damage, and max stats. Redguard or Wood Elf has ridiculous sustain. So if you're a new player, low CP, and you just want to have a stand build, that's a good choice. Also, Dummer is a really good choice because it gives you max stats and max weapon damage and spell damage, so you can go really easily from a Magpar to a Stamplar with just one race and not have to buy it over and over. Consumables that I went with, the Arterium's Takeaway Broth is really good. Sugar Skulls is also really good if you are good with resource sustain. So it just depends where you lie. Remember, you want more health on this build. If you can get to 30,000 health, that is very good because restoring focus, it's going to give you some more time to react. If you're running on 25k, 24k, you're just one attack away from getting nuked and dead. No fun. Potions, I carry tripods and immovable with speed on me, but anything you can get with immovable is really good, especially when charging into the big keep battles in Cyrodiil, so you don't get instantly snared, stunned, immobilized, and you're dead. Poisons on the front bar, you can either go with poisons or a weapon damage enchant on my 2H bar. Mundus Stone, I think the all-around best is Warrior weapon damage if you're good with sustain. If you're not good with sustain and struggle with that, you can swap out to the Serpent. Champion points that I went with, fitness, so rejuvenation, expert evasion, boundless vitality, and slippery. Warfare, I went with duelist rebuff, untamed aggression, endless endurance, and deadly aim. Green, really no performance here. Treasure hunter, steed's blessing, rationer, liquid efficiency. Okay, so now how do I actually play this? What do I do offensively? What's my bursting tool and so on? So typically what I do is I start on my back bar, and you'll see from this, I'm constantly putting my rune and extended ritual down. Quick cloak, bar swap. Then I hit a forward momentum and charge in. What this will allow me to do is give me a few seconds of the armor buff, a few seconds of the major evasion, so I'm taking less AoE damage. If my quick cloak procs damage, what it's going to do is reduce my damage, increase my damage, plus forward momentum is going to allow me to have some mobility. So I want to start off the fight by charging in and having about 4 to 5 seconds of really big burst. And then you kind of peel back and do the same thing. You should not be sitting there hitting 4 or 5 jabs at a time. If you do, you're probably going to die. So what you need to practice on is buffing, picking your spots, jumping in once those buffs are up, and absolutely dunking on someone. If you can't get them down in roughly 5-6 seconds, peel back, reapply the buffs, re-engage. Because if you don't, there's just going to be another bunch of enemies and so forth that are going to charge it, and you're probably going to be dead if you don't have those buffs up. Buffs that are most important to maintain: restoring focus, putting your rune down before you charge in, and kind of just coming back to the rune or re-putting it down. Quick cloak, mobility, damage, but really major evasion. Cyrodiil PvP is all about AoE damage. If you can reduce that by 20%, you'll see your survivability skyrocket up. Extended ritual, cleansing negative effects. You're going to know when you're getting hit by proc sets and so on by the effect your character makes. Prioritize casting this into a resolving vigor. Binding javelin, knock this back, bar swap, charge in. That's a heck of a combo, because if you knock them back, you get your bar swap fast enough into a stampede, piting jab, it's very hard for them to survive that. And then ultimates, I really don't use Temporal Guard too much. I primarily rely on Dawnbreaker of Smiting, and then a lot of dodge rolls and so on. In Battlegrounds in Cyrodiil, usually there's tons of corpses on the ground, so that's why I run Repentance, and I rarely have any sustain beyond that. And restoring focus, because there's almost always 1 or 2 bodies there. So I'm getting pretty low on gas all the time. You'll see my stamina pretty low, and I run out sometimes. But I'm just 1 or 2 seconds away from popping a Repentance and getting 1 or 2 more abilities, or popping a potion and getting a flood of resource. And then just bursting someone down is really just stampede, biting jabs. And then when they peel back, if they're on top of you, you're just going to biting jabs them and light attack weave. Don't forget to light attack weave. Yes, this is not PvE, but it makes a big difference. As they peel back or run away, it's going to cause them a lot of pressure with stampede. Also, make sure they're stunned on cooldown. When someone's running away from you and you can't close the gap, throw the biting jab, go to your back bar, boom, punt them, knock them down, and then do a stampede, because then it's going to hit. They don't have a second to break free. Biting jabs, game over. Love this build. I love Donnie Deltia. This character is awesome, looks cool, hits hard. I was just shocked through this together, and I'm like just melting people. So I wanted to get this out to you so you can pick it up. Flex in those abilities, flex in those gear pieces, and work towards that Gaze of Sithis, or if you can't get it, try a different monster helm or something, but those 2 5 pieces on your body will make a big difference. Body and jewelry and weapons. So hopefully you pick this up, modify it for what works best for you, and shout out to my Patreons for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching.